All right, welcome back to Helping Your Client Through Property Management. We're going to talk a little bit about economics, planning. Let me get a coffee here. General business and the general business economy right now, I think things are getting better. And it's kind of ironic to me. Well, first of all, let's talk about, in my mind, there are two types of property management in the residential world. The first type of property management is the true investor that wanted to be a landlord. Okay? So, like Randeep and Randy and the guys I work for bought the houses with the concept of being a real estate investor and knowing they're going to have tenants. That's one type of management you may end up doing. The other type of management are what I like to call can't sellers. Now, that is not becoming a biggest problem in this world, in this economic climate, as it was, say, 5 or 6 years ago. When there were people that couldn't sell, they were upside down. And at one point we were managing, hordes of properties for people that were in trouble with their bank and they moved out and we took over the management, or they were trying to sell it because they lost their job and they couldn't afford the payment. So that is a whole separate situation when you're dealing with a person that is a can't seller, okay? Somebody that didn't plan on getting into the landlording, didn't understand it, hired you to take over their property, and may not be in the mental condition to be a landlord. And believe it or not, it is a mindset that you have to understand, that there is a mindset. An investor going in knows there may be issues. Hey, I understand that not everybody's going to love my house like I love my house, so things like crayons on the walls I'm going to expect. Whereas a can't seller is going to see their house as, oh, that's my house. You know what I mean, right? You've had that, certainly. That's my house, and this is where little Johnny grew up, and somebody drew on the wall with crayons. How despicable. So it's a completely different mindset for that. So make sure that you understand that currently right now, it's a great business economy. Business is picking up, interest rates are down, things are going good, all kinds of stuff. As far as the real estate economy, we all understand that the real estate economy is also very good. It's getting better, let's put it that way. It may not be very good. It's certainly not 02 or 03. And some of us could actually argue that maybe 02 and 03 was too damn good, and that's why we got into 07 and 08 and 09. Back in those days, if you could fog a mirror, you could get a loan. Well, that person's the one that turned it into the short sale in 2007 or 8. That's just a general statement. Don't get upset, okay? So maybe the real estate economy, while we're saying it gets better, is probably right now really good. I was just reading something on my Facebook page. And by the way, if you're at home listening, or for those 3 or 4 of you here that I recognize, or don't recognize is a better way of saying it, I'm the admin to a Facebook group called Real Estate Professionals. It used to be called Realtors, but believe it or not, the NAR actually got a legal department, called me about 7 or 8 days into starting that group. Now it's been 4 or 5 years ago. But I'm the admin. There's over almost 1,100 agents on there. If you guys have not friended me personally, friend me personally on Facebook. It's just Raymond Modulin. You can find me, certainly. And I will move you over to this professional group. Now, this professional group is not a fish in the barrel kind of place. Don't call me and tell me you've got a new listing, or better yet, don't post it on this group and say I've got a new listing at 12 Smith Street. I don't give a damn, because we all have the MLS. All right? This is a group of like-minded individuals that want to get together to ask questions and learn. Obviously, that's what I'm into, is the education, and piss and moan, which sometimes those are the funnest ones to listen to. But one of the things they were just talking the other day is we voted as a group that we actually allow mortgage people in too because they're licensed. We don't allow an investor in. We don't allow home inspectors in. We don't allow certainly unlicensed anybody in. So one of the things they were just talking about was a mortgage guy the other day was talking about that they are now back to 95.5 no PMI loans. So we're saying that the real estate economy is getting better. At some point, I think we confuse the word better with too damn good. And at some point, you're going up the hill, and you get right to the top of the hill, and you need less energy as you get right at the crown of the hill, and then at some point you tip over the top of the hill, and you go back down the hill. That's what I think we did in that 02 to 07. We went over the hill and started speeding down towards the bottom. Well, like a bunch of stupid, ignorant, greedy people, we're now going back up the hill, and I think we're almost at the crest. So when I say the real estate economy is good, I might contend right now it's probably the best it should be, and it should stop and maintain a plateau. If we continue to get easier and easier and relax our FICO scores and relax the down payment amount, we're going to end up tipping over the top and going back down again, and hence the word cyclical. And I'm afraid that if you're in this business long enough, you're going to see this cycle again. Maybe 15 years, maybe 20 years, but I'm afraid it's coming back, as evidenced by the amount of, or lack of amount of loan down payment. Will we get back to the zero loan? I don't know. But I think the real estate economy right now is really good. And that is something that we can debate all day. All right, so let's talk a little bit about, what are we going to talk about now? The owner's objectives. The owner's objectives, remember one of your responsibilities is to achieve your owner's objectives. Well, that's all fine and good, but you really have to know what the owner's objectives are. And this is involved in finding a meeting to find out what the owner's objectives are. Now, in this class, because it is an educational portion, there are going to be some things that I'm going to try and educate you guys on that you're going to disagree with, and here comes one of them. Because I am sure that there is at least one investor out there whose objective is to be a slumlord. All right? Now, I probably shouldn't say that in a derogatory meaning, but what I mean by that is I am sure that there are probably a number of investors that buy properties in not so good areas with the concept of putting very little into the property because they live and breathe and work under the concept that everybody's got to live somewhere. All right? So there is a call, believe it or not, for $400 a month rentals, just like there's a call for $1,400 a month rentals, okay? If your owner's objectives, and you could actually choose to not work with them. That's your prerogative or my prerogative, but I'm just telling you, there is an objective of an investor that may say, look, here's my goal. My goal is I'm buying $7,000, $8,000, $10,000 properties down in the war zone. I'm going to put just enough in it to make sure the windows seal, the doors lock, and the heat turns on. Other than that, I don't want to redo the carpet every time. I don't want to, put new vinyl siding in. The old stand-up shower is fine. Yada, yada, yada. I am not going to go in and put a whole bunch of money in, and I'm going to gear towards that $8 an hour worker where both their husband and wife work, and they, come back here because there are people that have that lifestyle, okay? I don't know why it sounds like I'm preaching because I really shouldn't. The point being is finding the owner's objectives. Maybe that is his objective. If you find that out and you go, you know what, I don't want to be involved, that's fine. He also may be wanting to the completely opposite of that. He may want to go into revitalization areas and say, look, I want to buy that $20 and $30 and $40,000 house, and I'm going to put $40,000 and $50,000 in it. I want to create a $1,800 a month rental. So there's going to be a lot of upfront management on your part of controlling maintenance issues and repair and revitalization, yada, yada, yada. Okay, that's cool. I just need to know my objectives. And you get through that through this thing called counseling. All right. One of the other things you might think about is, are they a long-term or a short-term play? Is your investor's idea to, I don't want to say flip, because typically flip is a whole different mindset than real estate, than in landlords. All right. Yeah. Once again, I apologize. The mic is not working today, so I'll try and repeat it for those of you at home. So your question is there a difference between long-term and short-term management? The answer from that is, from a management standpoint, not really. And I'm presuming you mean a short-term hold versus a long-term hold for your investor client, right? No, not really, because the second you put a person in your house that you're managing, and let's talk about residential, very few short-term plays in the commercial world from a property management. Now, I take that back. I did flip an industrial property that had one client in it, but that was a whole different concept because I never intended to hold that. I went into that because it was just a hell of a good deal. On a residential side, the second a tenant moves in, whether it's 1 day or 1 year or 10 years, whatever the goal turns out to be, you pretty much have the same responsibilities and obligations to your client and or the tenant in that manner. I mean, you still got still got fair housing laws, you still got Equal Credit Opportunity Act, you still got all of the issues, whether they're there for a day or not. So if it's a long-term play or a short-term play, really is not inherently dependent upon the tenant as much as it is the investor. And that's why you really need to have a meeting with your investor and say, hey, look, are we looking to do long-term plays? Because if you're doing a short-term play, then maybe putting a new roof on that's going to last 15 years may not be your best course of action. If you're going to hold it a year or two and get out of it, and this roof has still got 6 or 7 years left, let's let it slide, and then when we sell it, we'll deal with it then. But if you're buying this to put in your stable, that's going to be your retirement fund as you grow older, and this is going to be a 20 or 30-year play, or, I would say anything longer than 5 years, maybe 7, to me is a long-term play. If someone says, yes, this is going to be my kid's inheritance, then we might want to start thinking about assessing a preventative maintenance schedule in it up now and see where we're at and make sure we can get ahead of the curve so that you're not dropping down 20 grand for a new roof in 3 or 4 years. Let's life cycle this thing out and figure out you got to give me $1,000 a year in a maintenance fund so that at the end of 5 or 6 or 7 years we can defray the cost for a new roof. So having the investor's intentions or objectives, I guess in some extent can actually decide if you want to work for them. If they come in and say, I want to be the biggest slumlord in Indianapolis, and they openly tell you that, hey, I don't want to work for you. That's entirely fine. There's a management plan that you are going to probably, as step 2 of this evolution. Step 1 is you're going to sit with them and talk about, hey, what's your objectives? Long-term play, I want to do revitalization, I like to have all my rentals in outlying townships, and I want them all to be $1,100 plus. Okay, great. Here's my plan. My plan is to do this and this and this, and here's what I think we can do, and here's how we do it. Now remember, you may have a plan for an investor that's different than a can't seller. because a canned seller is kind of like, I just want to keep my head above water. I don't want it to go into foreclosure. What can we do? Yada, yada, yada. Whereas an investor's management plan may have, like I was just saying, life cycling. You know, hey, you're going to need a new roof. Your HVAC is probably going to go in the next 4 or 5 years. So there's all kinds of plans that you would lay out to your client and say, if I was the property manager, here's what I would do. All right, which leads you to the management agreement. Now remember, a management agreement between a property manager and a client is very analogous. It's the exact same thing as the listing agent and the seller. The only difference is, if you remember your Realtor 101, in a listing agreement, the power that's conferred to the agent is what they call special agency, which only allows you to do one thing: market the property for sale, or help him find a buyer, depending on which side you are. But it's only for one item, all right? Whereas a property manager and a property management agreement confers general agency. General agency says that you can do many things, typically in one area of a person's life. Let's go back to the client of mine that I was talking about, Randy. In our agreement, he confers the power to me to actually negotiate and enter into lawn care agreements with lawn cutters. I also collect his rent. I also screen the tenant. I also pay some bills. I also may, hire a maintenance guy. So there are many different things that I have the power to do inside of our agreement because he has conferred general agency versus special agency. So just remember that it's very analogous to selling a house, like a listing agreement would be. A management agreement is the agreement you use for property management, but it confers different agency. Now, under the agency laws, I am allowed to have different types of agency with different people. And theoretically, at least in my mind, I can have different agencies with the same person. And I know that this is probably, I've talked to other property managers, and I've had difference of opinions with a couple of them. And let me tell you, for instance, I manage properties for a couple different guys, all right? In my management agreement, it does not talk about listing the property for sale at all. I use a separate listing agreement if I'm going to list their property. There are a couple guys out there that I know that in their management agreement, one of the rules or one of the requirements is that it talks about them listing the property. So they kind of tie them together. I don't. And if you don't, so theoretically, like if Randy went to sell his property, I could be his general manager while I'm managing it, put a sign in the yard, broker the deal. I could be a special manager, special agent under that agreement, all right? So I don't mix them. That's just something I don't. If you have questions about that, contact your attorney, or do whatever the hell you want. It's always easier to ask for forgiveness than for permission. But I always make them separate issues, listing versus managing, all right? Any questions dealing with the economics? Nope.